What does it truly mean to live a good life? I mean, is it something you really need to uh, examine to make it worth living? Or is that maybe just an exaggeration?
Well, Socrates famously insisted that an unexamined life is not worth living.
Right. But as we found in this really remarkable book, plenty of unexamined lives actually turn out to be deeply worthwhile.
Absolutely. Yet Socrates was on to something important, wasn't he?
He was. Taking the time to truly examine your life, maybe just periodically, it can lead to these small, powerful corrections. And sometimes, even truly radical, positive transformations.
And it's precisely that transformative power we're exploring today. We're unpacking wisdom from this single, compelling book that brings together various philosophies and traditions, ancient and, well, modern too.
So our mission today is really to extract those surprising facts and practical insights that offer pathways to a well-lived existence, all designed to inspire your own reflection and rational thought, maybe for a clearer path forward in your life.
And this kind of exploration, pulling deep insights from books, it's exactly what our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments, is all about.
Yeah, we provide AI-powered book analysis. It's distilled to help you gain knowledge quickly, but, thoroughly. Find those aha moments and hopefully never feel overwhelmed by just information overload.
So let's maybe unpack this with a really powerful story of personal transformation right from the book itself.
Okay.
One of the authors, Massimo, he was absolutely certain he'd be a scientist for life. And for over 2 decades, that's exactly what he did, right at the top of his field.
Wow.
But then a midlife crisis hit. And instead of buying that, cliched red Ferrari,
Which he apparently couldn't afford anyway.
exactly, he actually went back to graduate school, got a PhD in philosophy, and just completely shifted his entire career path.
That's quite a change.
It really is. And what's truly fascinating here is how he sort of serendipitously stumbled upon Stoicism via Twitter, of all places.
Twitter, no way.
Yeah. He describes it as love at first click, and his life, well, it hasn't been the same since, and definitely for the better. And this isn't just like a random anecdote. It powerfully illustrates how examining your life, even with what might seem like small corrections, can genuinely lead to these radical positive changes.
Right. You don't necessarily need a huge crisis. Sometimes just a critical look can set you on maybe a more fulfilling, unexpected path.
Precisely.
That's a great jumping off point. So let's begin our philosophical journey with Buddhism, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, around maybe 500, 400 BCE.
Yeah.
Its core aim is really profound, just to relieve pain and suffering.
And the book highlights how much of our, existential pain often stems from these internal sources, things like anger, resentment, blame, emotions that hurt not just other people, but ourselves too.
Definitely.
So the Buddhist approach, as the book breaks it down, it's about actively deflating the ego.
Deflating the ego, what does that look like?
Well, it's not about denying yourself exactly. It's more about cultivating virtues like compassion, loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. There's a really clear ethical imperative here to love, to substitute compassion and love whenever and wherever there is suffering, violence, cruelty, and hate.
So it's a path to release from suffering, ultimately aiming for nirvana.
Yes, that's the ultimate goal.
I found a truly surprising point in the book about Buddhism. This belief that anger can be entirely eliminated, even in mortals.
Yeah, that's a tough one for many people.
It really contrasts with our Western views, doesn't it? Where anger is often seen as natural or, sometimes even necessary for driving change. The book even poses that thought experiment. Would a Buddhist kill Hitler? How does that radical idea fit in?
It's a challenging concept, absolutely. The book clarifies that for classical Buddhism, anger is just never productive. It clouds your judgment. It leads to more suffering. It's a bit like the Stoic philosopher Seneca, actually, who argued anger is never useful even for a soldier. Buddhism sees anger as this kind of grasping, rapacious ego that just wants to destroy. So the solution isn't just suppressing anger, but getting at its root. And that ties directly into the practice of mindfulness.
Right. And beyond that specific point on anger, Buddhism really leans into mindfulness and meditation. Practices that, as the book notes, actually come from ancient yoga techniques. And it explains how this helps us grasp concepts like impermanence and no self-experientiality. It's not that you don't exist, right? But more that your self is constantly changing, like a river, not some solid block.
Exactly. And realizing that helps break the grip of that idea that, I am the most important thing in the universe. It reminds us that our worries, our anxieties, they're just transient thoughts, not who we fundamentally are.
Yeah.
And on that note, the book also does a good job clearing up some common Western misconceptions about Buddhism. Remember those color of happiness studies from the early 2000s?
Oh, yeah, vaguely. The media went a bit wild, didn't they?
Totally wild. Hyperbolically reporting that meditating monks had discovered a happiness spot in the brain, or that Buddhists were somehow the happiest people in the world.
I remember that hype. It was everywhere for a while. The book really sets the record straight on that, showing how one sort of preliminary study on a single monk just got blown completely out of proportion.
Right. Owen Flanagan, the author, did report on it, but then news agencies just ran with it, declaring Matthieu Ricard the happiest person in the world.
Wow.
But classical Buddhism, as the book clarifies, it focuses far more on minimizing suffering, on achieving serenity and equanimity, not necessarily a constant state of happiness as, we typically think of it.
That makes sense. So if Buddhism guides us in finding inner peace amid suffering, how do these individual insights then translate to our connections with others? This seems like a good place to bring in Confucianism.
Definitely. Confucianism offers this powerful framework for building a good life specifically through relationships. Kangxi, or Confucius, really emphasized compassion for others and personal integrity.
And the book explains that while, we have special obligations to our family, the broader Confucian view is that we should have compassion for all under heaven. Basically, treat everyone as if they were family because ultimately we're all interdependent.
Good relationships truly make for a good life. That's central. And what's really compelling here are the core Confucian virtues. The book highlights two as being paramount.
Okay, which ones?
First, benevolence. That's compassion for others, that sort of visceral feeling of alarm you'd have for a child you see in danger.
Got it.
And second, righteousness, which is this disdain for ethical shame. Like refusing to cheat, even if you know you wouldn't get caught.
Integrity.
Exactly. Propriety or, mastery of etiquette, that's also a virtue. But it's considered less crucial than the other two.
Right. The book shares that great anecdote about Queen Victoria, doesn't it? Drinking her finger bowl water at a dinner.
Yes. To save a guest from embarrassment, it perfectly illustrates how true propriety actually prioritizes genuine kindness over just rigidly following social conventions.
That's a fantastic example. But the book also pushes back against a common idea we see in media, right? This whole notion of sudden enlightenment.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the cold, distant father who suddenly realizes his parenting mistakes in the last 5 minutes of a sitcom, becomes a loving dad overnight, and then boom, the credits roll.
Exactly. The book really debunks that myth. It stresses that real ethical development is hard work. It takes a long time. It's not some sudden revelation that just solves all your problems forever.
No quick fixes.
No. It requires sustained effort, cultivation, ongoing self-awareness. It really is a journey.
And Confucius's single guiding teaching, the book points out, is reciprocity. Do not impose upon others what you yourself do not desire.
The golden rule, basically, but framed as a negative.
Right. And while modern understanding, of course, adds crucial layers thinking about race and gender, recognizing how experiences and desires differ, the book argues this is still a really powerful starting point for trying to live a benevolent, righteous, wise, and proper life. It encourages us to try and think from the other person's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit.
Right.
Let's explore Taoism, sometimes spelled Taoism.
Right. And while Confucianism is really focused on social harmony, Taoism puts more emphasis on the individual living in harmony with nature and the natural flow of the universe, the Tao.
And a key Taoist concept the book introduces is this idea of putting our mind on a diet. What does that entail?
It means actively clearing out those, quote, tangled weeds of anxiety and worry that tend to clog up the mind. The goal is to create space for illumination and acuity.
Okay.
And Taoism has this unique approach to uncertainty. It doesn't see it as a problem that needs correcting, but more as a fundamental condition of life that you need to be prepared for and accept.
That's interesting.
Yeah, the perspective is that real strength entails flexibility, real wisdom entails uncertainty, real endurance entails resilience, real power entails humility. It's a profound reframing of things we often perceive as weaknesses.
That idea is illustrated really beautifully by Zhuangzi's phone for a stone exercise.
Yeah.
Or maybe better known as the enormous gourd story.
Yes, the gourd story. Huizi, Wanzi's friend, he destroys this enormous gourd because it's just too big to fill with water or use as a dipper.
Right.
And Zhuangzi basically criticizes him, asking why he didn't think outside the box. Why not make it into a vessel to float down a river?
Change your perspective.
Exactly. It's a wonderful lesson encouraging us to challenge our fixed viewpoints and try to see from Tao's perspective. This can lead to what the book calls the illumination of the obvious, just appreciating completely different ways of looking at reality.
I like that. Illumination of the obvious.
And the concept of day, which is like internal power or circulation, is also vital here. It allows you to sort of attune to the natural movement of things. The book uses the legend of Dayu, who managed this devastating flood not by fighting it with dikes, but by redirecting the water, creating new channels that flowed with nature, which also ended up serving as irrigation.
Working with it, not against it.
Precisely. That story is actually the origin of the popular expression, flowing like water. It's about adapting and working with circumstances, not being rigid and pushing against them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, our next stop is Stoicism, a philosophy focused on achieving tranquility through control and virtue.
And the Stoics developed some very practical exercises for dealing with suffering, things like keeping philosophical diaries or practicing self-denial. You mentioned cold showers earlier, or maybe fasting.
Cold showers.
Yeah.
I know many listeners might be thinking that sounds less like philosophy and maybe more like, well, torture.
Mm-hmm.
But what does the book suggest is the real purpose behind those challenging practices? How do they actually lead to ataraxia, that deep tranquility?
That's a really crucial point. It's definitely not about being tough just for the sake of being tough. The book emphasizes these practices are meant to foster gratitude for small things, build resilience, basically prepare you mentally for bigger challenges when they inevitably arise. The ultimate goal is indeed ataraxia, which the book defines as an unshakable inner calm, a deep tranquility of mind in the face of anything the universe throws at you.
So it's about mastering your internal landscape, not necessarily the external circumstances.
Exactly. And the way to get there involves two really crucial Stoic ideas. First, life is fundamentally about being a morally good person. That means the continuous practice of 4 cardinal virtues: practical wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance.
Right. And the second idea, which I found particularly powerful, is the dichotomy of control.
Yes.
Distinguishing what's up to us from what's not. The archer metaphor illustrates this perfectly, doesn't it?
It really does. An archer controls their practice, their bow, the tension, the release. All that is up to them.
Mm-hmm.
But once that arrow leaves the bow, the wind, maybe the target moves slightly, that's no longer up to the archer.
So it teaches us to internalize our goals, focus on our effort and intentions rather than just the external outcomes.
Precisely. Put your energy where it actually matters most on your own actions and choices.
Okay.
The book explains this further with the concept of lexicographic preferences. It sounds complex, but the idea is simple.
Oh.
Virtue is in an A category. It's non-negotiable moral integrity. External things like wealth, health, reputation, they're in a B category.
Okay.
You can trade things within category B, sure. But you would never trade something from category A for something from B. The analogy used is like never trading your daughter for a Lamborghini, no matter how much you might want the car.
Right. Virtue is paramount, a principle you just don't compromise.
Exactly.
And contrary to the popular misconceptions, Stoics aren't emotionless, are they? Not like Mr. Spock.
Not at all. Seneca, for instance, even advocated for drinking wine in moderation for refreshment. It's not about suppressing emotion, but about understanding which emotions are helpful and which are based on faulty judgment.
Like with insults.
Yes. The book clarifies that insults are only harmful if you choose to be offended. As Epictetus taught, remember that it is we who torment, we who make difficulties for ourselves. That is, our opinions do.
So if you react like a rock to an insult,
Yeah.
what has the abuser actually accomplished?
Nothing, really. You hold the power in how you choose to respond based on your opinions and judgments.
Okay, that's powerful. Now let's maybe explore some more modern applications of these ideas, starting with ethical culture. The book presents this as a non-theistic religion.
That's right. And its core focus is on deed, not creed, which means ethical behavior, how you act, is prioritized over specific beliefs or dogma.
Mm.
Felix Adler, its founder, proposed what he called a supreme ethical rule. Act so as to elicit the goodness in others and thereby in oneself.
Elicit the goodness in others. What does that mean in practice?
It requires this kind of dynamic relational empathy. It goes beyond the maybe more egocentric golden rule of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It compels you to truly engage with others, to understand their unique needs and potential, and then act in a way that helps foster their best selves.
Wow, that's a profound shift in perspective, isn't it? From just treating others how I want to be treated to trying to bring out the best in them.
It is. And related to this idea of ongoing ethical development is the Jewish concept of teshuvah, which means return or repentance. The book presents this as a really powerful framework for continuous self-improvement and accountability.
Oh, so?
It details Maimonides' 6 steps for ethical transformation. First, you regret your error. Then you renounce it, you confess it, you seek reconciliation with anyone you've harmed, you make amends, and finally, you resolve not to repeat the offense.
That sounds like a truly actionable path to growth and taking responsibility.
It really is. It emphasizes that ethical change is possible, but it requires specific actions.
Okay, moving to a more contemporary approach, the book introduces effective altruism.
Yes, which focuses on using reason and evidence, really rigorous evidence, to figure out the most effective ways to do good in the world.
So it's not just about having good intentions.
Not at all. It means actually researching complex issues to find, as they put it, the right answer for maximizing positive impact. It involves actively connecting with researchers and knowledge producers to make sure your efforts, whether time or money, are genuinely beneficial and not wasted, or worse, counterproductive.
What I find compelling about this approach is how it seems to foster humility, about the world's complexity, and also a deep appreciation for existing knowledge, things like vaccines or improved agricultural yields.
Exactly. It's about being smart and evidence-based in your desire to help, really maximizing the good you can do.
Okay. And finally, the book brings us to secular humanism. How's that described?
It's presented as a philosophical worldview that kind of blends ancient wisdom from figures like Socrates, Aristotle, the Stoics, with modern ideas like liberalism, utilitarianism, and even an existentialist sensibility.
So a synthesis of sorts.
Kind of. It strongly asserts human worth and dignity, emphasizing that our rights and duties are self-assigned, they're not given by a deity. It celebrates human achievements and looks to improve the human condition primarily through reason and science.
And this worldview also embraces something called natural freedom or compatibilism. That sounds a bit philosophical.
It is, but the idea is pretty intuitive. Think of it like this. You choose to ride your bike down a hill. Okay, the laws of gravity are natural forces acting on you, right?
Sure.
But you're still free to pedal faster or steer or brake. Your freedom exists within and through those natural laws, not somehow outside them.
Okay. So it's about acknowledging that we operate within certain realities, certain natural constraints, but we still take responsibility for our choices and goals within that framework.
Precisely. Human freedom and responsibility exist, but they exist within the natural world, working through natural causes and effects.
Got it. So when you look across all these different traditions, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Stoicism, even these modern approaches, are there common threads?
Absolutely. Despite their, very real differences, the book highlights these shared universal principles. Things like the fundamental human need for meaning and agency in our lives, the deep importance of compassion for others, and this profound understanding that cooperation and pro-sociality, basically, getting along and helping each other, are absolutely essential for human flourishing, regardless of one's specific metaphysical beliefs.
So they might offer different maps, but they often point towards similar vital insights about how to live well.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, this exploration has certainly offered some powerful mental maps for navigating life's challenges, all drawn from this single, quite remarkable book, covering everything from ancient wisdom to modern thought.
It really covers a lot of ground. And remember, this kind of unique insight and curated knowledge, it's available to you through Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel.
That's right. And we encourage you to explore our other podcasts, too, which continue this journey of critical thought and reflection on important ideas.
So here's a final thought to ponder. If all these profound philosophies, both ancient and modern, seem to agree that, true strength is flexibility, true wisdom involves embracing uncertainty, and maybe real power lies in humility and connection with others.
What does that truly mean for how you approach your life, starting today? Something to think about.
Definitely. If you found value in this discussion, please subscribe for more explorations into impactful books.
And share this exploration with someone who you think would appreciate these insights. Consider purchasing the book we discussed today. The link is in our show notes to continue your own journey with these ideas.
And most importantly, keep thinking critically about the ideas that shape your world.